Good evening, everyone. My name is Paul Young. I'm just basically going to walk you through a comparison of a high-level view of policies between the Liberal Party of Canada and the Conservative Party of Canada. Well, I'm only going to look at some major policy statements. I'm not going to get at all the what I call some of the boutique programs being offered both from Justin Trudeau as well as Stephen Harper, but I'm going to focus on the main themes because these are the main themes that are going to drive in terms of the discussion, in terms of your decision when you vote in 2 weeks to what party you want to take office as the next official government. So let's talk about the economy because it's got less and less attention, and let's be very specific here. The economy is not growing by gangbusters. We'll be lucky if we grow at 1% this year and maybe 2.5% maybe next year. So it's under a lot of strain and it's a lot of global pressure because Canada depends on exports. Let's stop there now. Now, if you've got a dependency on two aspects of your economy, whether that's exports or the domestic market, which is basically consumer spending, you need to be very careful in terms of what policies you bring in to support the economy to make sure it doesn't bring more harm in. So that being said, Justin Trudeau's complete focus is on green technology. He says very little about manufacturing, and in essence, when he does talk about it quickly, he basically tells people to get away from it. Now, the other thing that he talks about is looking at small businesses and getting rid of these so-called tax shelters that people get in and create businesses a way to kind of earn an income to support their lifestyle by using different rules because of the way small business works. Now, they're not basically designed purely for people to do avoidance. It's all part of the tax strategy, but you wouldn't get that from basically Justin Trudeau because in essence he has trust funds, and this guy's the same guy that has a bunch of holding companies that manage his trust company. So really, where does he stand on that? The second point is he's got a plan for EI, which is basically in the first year or so they basically plan a holiday so that if you bring in a new hire, you don't have to pay EI premiums. Well, what that's going to do is basically put pressure on the EI fund to stay in balance, and it's actually been told that's not going to work. So that being said, you're looking at a very guy that's very dedicated in terms of looking at taxation and has a narrow focus on the economy versus contrasting Stephen Harper, who's looking at everything from small business tax cuts to EI reduction and a focus on investment and exports. So on trade and the economy, you have to kind of take a step back. Whose policies do you believe? Now, infrastructure, which is a critical area where some praise should go to the Liberal Party, where they've decided that we need to kickstart the economy a bit more to help it. We're going to spend $60 billion over the next decade or so. But what they don't tell you is $20 billion of that is going into what they call social infrastructure, which is public housing, which does very little in terms of economic value. Now, you don't hear that. What you don't hear is Harper is still going to continue down that infrastructure path with the gas tax and the Build Canada Fund. He's put more priority in things that will drive GDP as well as transit, but you're not hearing that from the Liberal. Let's talk about healthcare now. Healthcare is another critical area, and you could throw all the funding you want at healthcare, and that's what Justin Trudeau seems to think because he's taking his advice probably from Kathleen Wynne. And we'll give you an example with Ontario. Ontario gets 6% growth now up till when the new agreement or the new transfer comes in where Harper's taking it to 3% minimum, but will grow faster depending on the GDP growth. Now that being said, we give Ontario 6% growth each year in healthcare. You know what she gives healthcare? She gives it 2%. So what is Wynne doing with that 4%? So even if Justin Trudeau decides to give Wynne $10 billion more, is that $10 billion actually going to go into frontline services? And the answer is not. The next point is Veterans Affairs. There's a lot of rhetoric going around Veterans Affairs. The charter that was brought in is a predecessor to the Liberal Party bringing that charter in. So Harper's honored that charter and is looking at expansion of that. Now, you may hear the preamble about these opening more of these offices. Well, they were closed because they were duplicate offices in the same area where they already had a government office that could support the veterans. So get away from all the rhetoric. Don't listen to just one side of the vets. Go up and look at requests for priorities, or just listen to some of the vets tell you that the system itself hasn't failed them. Let's talk about taxation. He will eliminate the family tax credit, but he's not really clear about how he will rework the taxation issues because he has a revenue problem as we know with his plan. That being said, he's going to focus on elimination of these boutique tax credits, whether that's some of the fitness tax credits or some of the other things that people depend on as part of the tax strategy. They're gone. And if he removes boutique tax cuts, guess what happens? That forms a tax increase to families. Stephen Harper will continue down that path of looking at taxation and make sure that he's helping the families out. Let's talk about the Canadian forces, because we can go back through history, and whether that's with Justin Trudeau's father Pierre Elliott Trudeau or with John Chrétien, there's been very little focus on replacement of military assets by the Liberal Party. So what's basically Justin Trudeau saying? I'll scrap the F-35 plan. Yes, it may not be the right plan, and the government may make a decision if it becomes a Harper government again. However, what needs to be clear is the CF-18s have to be replaced. So you don't have any indication of what Justin Trudeau is going to do in terms of replacing the CF-18. He did say more money for the Navy, which is fine. That aligns to what Harper's already doing with the frigate contract. But there's no commitment on either on the resource management side or how he's going to continue to modernize the fleet. Let's talk foreign policy. Stephen Harper is very strong on foreign policies. He's admired around the world for his tact and his diplomacy. He supports the missions against terrorism as well as any NATO or UN supports required. He gets involved with that. You may not hear that, but you're more than welcome to go out and look at one of my foreign policies where I go in more specific details. Justin Trudeau is being dictated by his two advisors. One is Sacha Trudeau, who's a film director who made films from the Palestinians as well as the Iranians. He's also got another guy named Omar Al-Hagra, who's tied to the Saudi community. And what that means is his policies are going to be tailored to a certain belief. Now, that being said, that's a dangerous belief if you have one angle of policy. You have to look at the overall benefits of whether that's foreign aid, whether that's just the general policies of tact, how you deal with countries. Because the world's not always a pleasant place. You're going to meet unpleasant people. You have to deal with them. And you need to ask yourself, do you want a person like Justin Trudeau at the table talking to a Vladimir Putin, or talking to Assad, or talking to some of these nasty leaders? Do you really want that? Or do you want a powerful statesman that will stand up for human rights and stand up to these leaders? And the only choice that you have when you look on foreign policy is Stephen Harper. Deficits and surplus is my final point here. And I want to bring this up very critical to you. Is Mr. Trudeau is taking a page out of Obama, and he's going to introduce Keynesian economics, which basically means the government's going to add money into the system to help the economy grow. The idea is over the long haul, the economy will be strong enough to pick up by making key investments. What he's not telling you is, and he's been pretty evasive around that, he seems to say that the 6 years of Harper running deficits were bad, but he seems to think 3 more years of deficits is good. So really, where does he stand on the whole deficit and debt financing? He doesn't. Stephen Harper will toe the line on expenses. He'll toe the line looking at what needs to be done. But having a balanced budget allows the government more options in terms of looking how it moves forward. What you really want going from, you've got an issue by choosing between a liberal government who has no policies in terms of determining to grow the economy or helping people, to a stable government that's proven that they have delivered the goods. When you make your decision on election day, you really need to start getting into the nitty-gritty of looking at the various policies and platforms.